Vanessa Granger had spent the last decade turning her life into a quiet success story. The cottage-style house on Willow Crest Lane wasn't just home, it was the culmination of every sleepless night, every dollar saved, every sacrifice made. She'd redesigned it herself, every beam and backsplash curated with her signature touch. Her interior design business, Granger and Bloom, had recently landed a major contract with a boutique hotel chain, and after years of grinding, Vanessa finally felt the scales tipping in her favor. And then, in the span of 7 days, her world detonated. It began with a note taped to her studio door: lease terminated. Failure to remit rent. Vanessa blinked at it, stunned. Her rent had been on autopay for years. When she called her landlord, he coldly explained that payments had bounced for 2 months straight. Her business account was empty, completely empty. Vanessa rushed to her bank, only to be told her account had been flagged and frozen due to suspicious withdrawals. But the real blow came the next morning when her husband, Daniel, served her with divorce papers. He didn't even hand them to her himself. A courier delivered the thick envelope while she was still barefoot on the porch, sipping her coffee. Daniel hadn't lived in the house in over a year. He'd claimed he needed space, a midlife reinvention that began with yoga and ended in the arms of his assistant. Vanessa had thought they were quietly negotiating. Instead, he'd hired a cutthroat attorney and filed a motion to claim the entire house as marital property, arguing that, because the title was technically in both their names, he was entitled to it in full. Vanessa was blindsided. She'd purchased the property herself, years before she even met Daniel. The renovations? Paid with her inheritance and business revenue. How could a judge even consider? But within 48 hours, a temporary court order froze her access to the property. Vanessa watched, hollow-eyed, as a sheriff escorted her off her own lawn, while Daniel, freshly tanned from a retreat in Sedona, watched from a safe distance. Then came the betrayal she never saw coming. Her sister Audrey appeared 2 days later with faux sympathy and a box of herbal tea. She clucked and hugged Vanessa tightly, offering support and a spare room, but behind the hug was a motive sharp as glass. That night, while Vanessa showered at Audrey's house, her sister accessed Vanessa's laptop, resetting passwords, forwarding client files, even emailing one of Vanessa's biggest clients with an urgent business update. By the next morning, 2 hotel contracts had been pulled. The clients claimed Vanessa had been unresponsive and incoherent. Someone had fabricated emails to paint her as unstable. Suspicion bloomed, cold and suffocating. Vanessa returned to her mother's house in desperation, one last thread of familial refuge. But her mother, Edith, looked nervous when she opened the door. Pale, agitated. "You should talk to your sister," Edith said, not meeting Vanessa's eyes. Something felt off. Later that evening, while pretending to sleep on the couch, Vanessa overheard her mother whispering on the phone. The conversation was short, but damning. "No, she hasn't figured it out." "Yes, I signed it. Audrey wired the money last month." Vanessa's blood froze. The next morning, she searched her mother's office and found it. A notarized agreement transferring co-ownership of the Willow Crest house, her house, to Audrey. Dated 2 months ago. Signed by Edith. The listed sale price was insultingly low. No lawyers, no warnings, just a quiet betrayal cloaked in ink and greed. Edith didn't deny it. Her excuse? "I needed the money for your uncle's medical bills." "Audrey promised she'd help you, Vanessa. It was supposed to be temporary." Temporary. Like eviction. Like abandonment. By Sunday, Vanessa stood on the curb outside the only home she'd ever truly built, watching movers load her belongings into a rented storage unit. She didn't cry. Not in front of them. She walked. With a single duffel bag slung over her shoulder and rage blistering her throat, Vanessa didn't look back. That night, she arrived at the rusting trailer her father once lived in, a forgotten metal box parked in a weedy corner lot on the edge of town. He'd died alone in that trailer, years after walking out on them. Vanessa had never come back. Until now. Inside, everything smelled like mildew and cigarette ashes. Mice had gotten into the cushions. But she dropped her bag and sat heavily at the table, surrounded by dust and silence. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Audrey. "I know you're hurting, but this is for the best. You'll see that soon." Vanessa stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned her phone off. In the silence that followed, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in her. The victim, humiliated, broken, discarded, was gone. And in her place, something colder began to stir. The trailer groaned under the weight of the summer heat and old regrets. Vanessa stood barefoot in the narrow galley kitchen, staring at the cracked linoleum like it held the answer to how her life had unraveled so violently. Every sound, the creak of the ceiling fan, the ticking of the warped clock, the occasional thud of some unseen creature in the walls, felt louder in this place, lonelier. She hadn't stepped foot here since the day they found her father's body in his battered recliner, a bottle of whiskey in his lap, and a scorched letter in the ashtray. The trailer still smelled faintly of tobacco and gasoline, as if even death hadn't quite aired him out. Vanessa moved slowly, numbly, pulling aside dusty curtains and opening broken drawers. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. A sign? A keepsake? A reason to believe her life hadn't always been built on someone else's secrets? In the back closet, jammed between old boots and yellowing tax records, she found a tin box duct-taped shut. Inside, receipts, newspaper clippings, and a black leather notebook, the kind detectives carry in gritty dramas. But this wasn't fiction. Inside were names, addresses, scribbled notes in her father's slanted handwriting. Some names were underlined in red, others were marked with an asterisk and a number. One name stood out. Elias. "Do not call unless you have nothing left to lose." Vanessa's breath caught. That name. It sliced through her like ice. She hadn't thought of Elias in years. Not since the incident. Her mother had forbidden her from ever speaking about it again, insisting that Elias was a dangerous mistake they were lucky to survive. "You're not a Granger if you drag him back into our lives," Edith had snapped once. But here he was, living in her father's notebook, underlined and circled 3 times. Later that night, she sat cross-legged on the floor beside a half-drained bottle of gin she'd found under the sink. She hadn't eaten. She couldn't. Her phone screen glowed like a lighthouse in the dark, the numbers for Elias already typed in. She hadn't hit dial yet. What kind of person has a fixer on speed dial? What kind of woman drinks gin alone in a dead man's trailer, about to call a shadow from her past? Apparently, her kind. Her hand hovered. 1 sip. 1 deep breath. Then she pressed the green button. The line didn't even ring. Just 1 click. And then... "Vanessa." His voice was low, smooth, almost amused. "Took you long enough." She froze. "How did you—" "I told you to only call if you had nothing left," Elias said, "so I assume you finally don't." A silence stretched between them, thick and intimate in its cruelty. "You once said you owed me," she whispered. "I did, and I paid it. Now, you're in my debt." A shiver ran down her spine. She remembered the last time they'd spoken, years ago, when her father was about to be indicted for illegal land transfers. Elias had made it all disappear. No charges, no publicity. But in return, he'd demanded silence and distance. They weren't friends. They weren't allies. Elias was a weapon, and Vanessa had buried him long ago. Or so she thought. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Your loyalty," he said. "And your trust, which you don't have anymore for anyone else." He wasn't wrong. She hesitated. "They took everything." "Not everything," Elias replied. "They didn't take your will. They didn't take your rage." Vanessa's lip trembled. My mother, my sister, they were supposed to protect me. Your mistake, Elias said, was believing you were still part of their plan. Before she could respond, the line went dead. The next morning there was a knock at the trailer door. Vanessa opened it slowly, expecting a neighbor or maybe a sheriff checking on squatters. Instead, a black sedan idled in the grass behind him, engine purring like a threat. And Elias stood there, dressed in a dark linen suit, sunglasses perched on his sharp nose, as if he hadn't just materialized out of her nightmares. "Pack a bag," he said. "For what?" "Justice." Vanessa hesitated. "Is that what this is?" Elias tilted his head. "No, it's better." She didn't ask more. She simply stepped back, letting him in. The trailer door creaked shut behind them. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Elias already had copies of the forged deed. That he had surveillance of Audrey meeting with a mysterious man outside a bank in Monaco. That he'd been watching her downfall like a spider in its web, waiting for her to be ready to pull the first thread. And now, she had. Vanessa hadn't seen Elias in 7 years, but when he stepped through the trailer door, he looked exactly the same, sharply dressed, unnervingly calm, with the kind of presence that suggested he was always 5 moves ahead. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't offer sympathy. Instead, he tossed a file onto the cracked kitchen table and gestured for her to sit. Inside were glossy surveillance photos of Audrey, her sister, her betrayer, exiting a luxury high-rise Vanessa didn't recognize. The timestamp was just 3 days old. Audrey's arm was looped around a man Vanessa had never seen before, dapper and smug with an investor's confidence. "I followed the money," Elias said, flipping through pages like a professor lecturing a child. "Your sister is now the silent co-owner of your biggest rival's design firm. The contracts you lost? They didn't disappear. They were redirected. Someone sent your clients forged emails that made it look like you were unstable." Vanessa's stomach turned. "I knew she was ambitious," she said bitterly. "But it's psychotic." "Psychotic?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "No, Vanessa. It's professional. Efficient. Almost elegant. She didn't just want what you had, she planned for it. The fake emails, the banking interference. Your husband? He didn't act alone either." He pulled another sheet from the file. It was a copy of a notarized directive granting Daniel power to access her business funds. The signature was hers. Or at least it looked like it. "I never signed this." "Exactly," Elias said, sliding it toward her. "It's a forgery, one of several." Vanessa's throat tightened. "So they all worked together? Audrey, Daniel, my mother?" "Not quite," Elias said. "Your mother's betrayal is more transactional. She signed over your house in exchange for hush money, yes, but what she was paid to keep quiet about is far more interesting." He pulled out another photo, a black and white scan of a building blueprint. Vanessa immediately recognized it, her house, or rather, the house that used to be hers. But the scan included something she'd never seen before. A sealed-off square beneath the foundation, labeled Vault, Private Access Only. "What the hell is that?" Vanessa whispered. "I'm still finding out," Elias replied. "But this much I know. It was constructed by your father under a false name, with private contractors tied to an offshore firm that no longer exists. That hidden vault is why someone with power wanted you out of that house." Vanessa felt a pulse behind her eyes. Her father had built that vault? When? And why? Before she could ask more, Elias pushed his chair back and stood. "I'll keep digging," he said, "but from here on out, we do this my way." Vanessa folded her arms. "Which means what exactly?" "It means no emotional outbursts, no contacting your sister, no showing your hand. We play this surgically, not like a wounded animal." She laughed bitterly. "Too late. I am a wounded animal." "Then use your teeth," Elias said coolly. They left the trailer that night in silence. Elias drove them in the black sedan, windows tinted, GPS disabled, to an unmarked office on the other side of town. Inside, Vanessa was met with a wall of screens, filing cabinets, and a whiteboard covered in names she didn't recognize. One, however, stood out: Malcolm Royce. "Who's that?" she asked. Elias hesitated. "He's the man Audrey's been meeting," Elias said. "A venture capitalist who once ran a development firm your father partnered with in the 90s. It went under in scandal after a whistleblower disappeared." "Disappeared?" Vanessa echoed. Elias nodded. "Her name was Nadine Avery. Your father was questioned, but never charged. All we know is that the land tied to the failed project was eventually rezoned. Guess where that land is now?" Vanessa's mouth went dry. "My house," she said slowly. "It's built on that land." "Exactly, and someone very powerful doesn't want the past buried under it to be uncovered?" Vanessa leaned forward. "So Audrey's just a puppet?" "Oh no," Elias said, smirking. "She's a willing accomplice. But someone else is pulling the strings." That night, back at the trailer, Vanessa couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Her house wasn't just a casualty of divorce or betrayal. It was a target in a long game she hadn't known she was part of. She rose and walked to the closet where she'd found her father's notebook. She flipped back through the pages, this time reading closer. Some names were now familiar: Royce, Avery, even the shell corporation that once owned the lot. But one entry stopped her cold. "Vault key, hidden behind the piano. If they ever come for it, burn everything." There was no piano in the trailer, not anymore. But there had been, years ago. She remembered it faintly. A dusty upright her father refused to let movers take when they downsized. It had gone into storage. Vanessa's pulse quickened. What if it was still there? What if the key hadn't just survived, but was waiting? She picked up her phone and texted Elias. Found a clue. "Need to check storage unit. Tomorrow." His reply came instantly. "Be careful. If you found it, someone else might be looking too." Vanessa stared into the shadows of the trailer, her father's voice echoing like a ghost through the years. "If they ever come for it, burn everything." The storage unit was exactly as Vanessa remembered: cold, metallic, and steeped in the faint odor of mildew and rust. Elias picked the lock with ease while she stood guard, adrenaline humming in her ears. Inside, time had been frozen in a dusty tomb of furniture and forgotten memories. And there, wedged between a broken armoire and a stack of old boxes, was the piano. It was even uglier than she recalled. Elias pried open the back panel while Vanessa sifted through the rest of the junk, until he stopped with a soft, satisfied grunt. In his hand he held a tarnished brass key attached to a crumbling tag. The words, "Vault Access, G. Granger," were barely legible. "That's it," he said. "This opens whatever your father was hiding." Vanessa's heart pounded, but even as one mystery inched toward resolution, another was clawing its way to the surface. She could feel it, like a splinter she couldn't reach. Something about her father's involvement didn't fit. Why build a vault? Why keep it secret? And why had her mother sold out their family legacy without blinking? Later that night, she confronted her mother. Claire Granger answered the door of her upscale condo in silk pajamas and a mask of fake surprise, as if Vanessa's life hadn't just been publicly shredded. She poured herself a drink before speaking a word. "If you're here to scream at me again, I'd rather you save your breath." Vanessa stepped inside uninvited. "I'm here for the truth." Claire exhaled sharply, took a long sip, then motioned for her to sit. "You want the truth? Fine. Your father wasn't the man you thought he was. He was brilliant, yes, but reckless. The vault? That was just the beginning. He got involved with a group of developers in the 90s, promised quick returns. But then people started disappearing. First a whistleblower, then one of the contractors." Vanessa froze. "Nadine Avery?" Claire's eyes flickered. Yes, you've been digging. She tried to expose them, didn't she? Claire nodded. And your father tried to help her, or so he claimed. But then Nadine vanished. The cops sniffed around. The land deal collapsed. The house was built to distract people, to bury what was underneath. Literally, when he vanished, I thought he might have been killed. But now? Vanessa's mind reeled. You knew he was involved in all this, and you still sold the deed? I didn't have a choice, Claire said coldly. Do you think I wanted to lose everything? Audrey offered me a way out, a payment in exchange for transferring the property. I didn't know what she was really after. Vanessa didn't believe that. Not entirely. You could have warned me. About the vault. About everything. And what would you have done? Claire snapped. You would have gone charging into a mess you didn't understand, just like him. Silence hung between them. Finally, Vanessa rose. I'm not like him. Claire's face hardened. Aren't you? You called him, didn't you? Elias. That stopped her cold. How do you know about Elias? Claire set her drink down. Because your father used him too. He was the one who found the whistleblower. He was the one who cleaned things up. He's not your savior, Vanessa. He's your father's shadow. The air drained from the room. Outside, Vanessa called Elias. You never told me you worked for my father. He paused, and when he spoke, his voice was colder than she'd ever heard it. You're not ready for that story? Not yet. He hung up. Back at the trailer, Vanessa found something she hadn't noticed before. Tucked behind a cabinet was a box of tapes, labeled by year. Most were blank, but one was marked in thick black ink. Avery interview, 1997. She played it on the old VHS combo unit. The screen flickered, and then a grainy image appeared. A woman with nervous eyes, sitting in a dim room. A younger version of her father sat across from her. They'll kill me if I talk, the woman whispered. I can protect you, George Granger said. But you have to tell me everything. What followed was a bombshell. Nadine described a network of corrupt city officials, developers, and bankers working together to launder money through phony land purchases. The vault wasn't just for hiding things. It was for storing original copies of forged deeds, bribe ledgers, and blackmail materials. And her father? He hadn't just tried to expose them. He'd collected the evidence, waiting for the right moment to cash it in, but the moment never came. The tape ended with a chilling final sentence from Nadine. If I disappear, it means your husband sold me out. Vanessa sat in stunned silence. The man she'd idolized had walked both sides of the line. Her mother had sold her out, and her sister? She was a puppet, but maybe not the only one. She stared down at the key from the piano. The vault didn't just hold documents, it held the truth, the kind that destroyed dynasties. And Vanessa finally understood why they'd taken her house. They weren't trying to ruin her life, they were trying to erase her father's. The press conference wasn't Vanessa's idea. Elias orchestrated it. If Audrey wants to win in the court of law, he said, then we'll gut her in the court of public opinion. Vanessa stood on the small stage at the local civic center, her once polished voice now hoarse with fury. The crowd of journalists leaned in as she held up a forged property deed, the one Elias had traced back to a shell company run by Audrey's new boyfriend, Jonathan Maddox, who claimed to be a tech investor but had no online presence before 2020. I built that house from nothing, Vanessa said, voice shaking, and they took it with lies, forged signatures, and threats. My sister betrayed me. My mother sold me out. And I want you all to know, I'm not going quietly. The story exploded online within hours. The footage of Vanessa, vulnerable yet fierce, went viral. Sympathy flooded in. Audrey, caught off guard, initially stayed silent. But silence was never her style. 2 days later, Vanessa was served with a defamation lawsuit, and with it came the second wave. A notorious gossip site published a scandalous article titled, Vanessa Granger, the designer who buried her rivals, complete with leaked photos from nearly a decade ago. One showed Vanessa standing beside a broken sculpture at a gallery owned by her former mentor, Cassandra Vale. Another showed a mysterious envelope Vanessa was seen handing to a junior competitor who suddenly left town weeks before a major bid Vanessa ultimately won. The implication was clear. Vanessa hadn't just outdesigned her rivals, she'd destroyed them. The timing was brutal. Clients who had just reached out to rehire her went dark. Online comments turned acidic. Elias offered no comfort. "Welcome to the game," he said coolly. "Now let's make our move." But Vanessa was spiraling. Were the allegations false? Yes. But were they fabricated from nothing? No. The incident with Cassandra had been a misunderstanding, one she'd never resolved. In the envelope, a severance check to a desperate assistant who needed to flee an abusive relationship. But proof? It no longer existed. She felt the trap closing. That night, Elias took matters into his own hands. He left the trailer and returned just before dawn with a cigarette burn on his wrist and blood on his cuff. He didn't explain. "What did you do?" she asked. "I knocked," he said. "But your sister's allies don't open doors politely." Vanessa stared at him. "Elias, I need to know if you're helping me or hurting me." He turned to her with that familiar, unreadable gaze. "We're well past questions of morality, Vanessa. This is survival." Then he slid a flash drive across the table. "Watch this." It was security footage. Audrey, in a high-end lounge, sitting with Jonathan and a man Vanessa didn't recognize. But the audio had been enhanced. "We get the house, we get the vault," Jonathan said. "I don't care about the vault," Audrey replied. "I care about watching her burn." "You're sure the mother won't talk?" She signed the damn contract and took the check. "She'll stay quiet." Then the stranger spoke. Voice cold, commanding. "The land's value triples if we get zoning permits, and the permit approval is tied to those files. Make sure Elias never finds them." Vanessa froze the screen. "Who is that?" Elias didn't answer. Vanessa's chest tightened. The vault wasn't just leverage, it was a weapon. And now she knew Audrey was in deeper than just jealousy. She was complicit in a much larger scheme. But what chilled her most was how casually her sister discussed destroying her. "She's always hated you," Elias said, "even as kids." Vanessa remembered the birthday cake incident when she was 10, how Audrey accidentally spilled juice on it moments before the party. Or when Vanessa got her first internship, and Audrey spread a rumor about favoritism. At the time, they'd seemed like petty sibling rivalries. Now, they look like warning signs. Vanessa decided to strike back. She contacted a tabloid with the footage. It aired that night with the headline, "Granger Family Civil War. Sister Plots, Lover Launders." The fallout was swift and brutal. Jonathan's accounts were frozen. His startup investors pulled out. Audrey's lawsuit was dropped as fast as it had been filed. And for a brief moment, Vanessa felt the scales tipping in her favor. But the win was short-lived. The next morning, a brick was thrown through the trailer's front window. A note was attached. "Stop digging, or next time it'll be your face." Elias barely blinked. "They're scared. That means we're close." Vanessa wasn't so sure, because beneath her rage was fear, not of the enemies outside, but of the person she was becoming. Cold, calculating, vengeful. That night, she found Elias in the yard, staring at the stars. "Do you ever regret what you've done?" she asked. He lit a cigarette. "Regret is for people who can afford to lose." And then he handed her a blueprint. It was her old house, and beneath it, a square marked sub-level access vault. "It's time," Elias said. "Let's finish what your father started." Vanessa held the blueprint with trembling hands, the moonlight casting long shadows across Elias's face. There it was, a square marking under her old home labeled Sub-Level Access Vault GHG, her father's initials. "He built this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Elias nodded. "Long before you rebuilt the house, long before he disappeared. Your father was hiding something they were all willing to destroy you for. Vanessa stared at the blueprint. The vault wasn't near the foundation. It was under it, sealed off, forgotten, protected by concrete and silence. According to Elias, there was only one way in. Through a hatch concealed beneath the tiled floor of what used to be her father's old study, now part of the luxury wine cellar Audrey had installed. "I thought he was just a failed handyman," she murmured. Elias's smile was grim. Gideon Granger was many things. Failed wasn't one of them. They planned the break-in for a stormy Thursday, when Audrey would be away at a fundraising gala. Elias bribed the night guard with a fake tip about an imminent fire code inspection. By midnight, they slipped through the back door with tools, gloves, and adrenaline. Inside, the house felt colder than Vanessa remembered. The walls had been painted over, her fixtures replaced, her touch erased. But the bones were still hers. And beneath them, something buried. They tore up the flooring in silence, guided by the blueprint. Vanessa's breath caught as her crowbar hit metal. Beneath the tile was a trapdoor, sealed with rusted bolts and a welded lock. Elias worked in a trance, torch in hand. 30 minutes later, the hatch groaned open, releasing a blast of stale, chemical-laced air. A metal staircase led downward into darkness. "Ladies first," Elias muttered. Vanessa descended, flashlight in hand, pulse thundering. The space was small and dry, lined with concrete walls and sealed drawers, like a bank vault fused with a panic room. And on the far wall, embossed in brass, was a plaque. "For the day they come for us." "What the hell?" Vanessa whispered. Drawer by drawer, they uncovered the truth. First came deeds, to dozens of parcels of land across the county, all acquired decades ago under false names. Then audio tapes, labeled with names Vanessa recognized from newspaper headlines, city council members, real estate tycoons, even a former mayor. One tape played static until a voice cut in, her father. "If you're hearing this, I didn't die, I ran, because I knew what was coming, and I knew they'd come after my family." More drawers held manila folders, full of schematics, bribe records, blackmail photos, a ring of corrupt deals tied to zoning, water rights, land swaps. And her family was at the center. Vanessa's legs buckled. My father wasn't hiding from them, he was part of them. "Correction," Elias said. He was the whistleblower, and when he backed out, they tried to silence him. Vanessa's hands shook as she pulled one final file from a bottom drawer. Her name was on it. Inside, a copy of the deed to her house, signed not by her mother or Audrey, but by a proxy tied to a shell company with links to Jonathan Maddox. Dated 6 months before her divorce. "They were planning this for years," she whispered. "They didn't just want my house, they wanted what was under it." She turned to Elias, and for the first time, doubt crept in. "Why didn't you tell me this was a conspiracy? You made it sound personal." Elias leaned against the wall. "Because if I had told you everything up front, you wouldn't have believed me, and you wouldn't have gotten angry enough to fight." Vanessa backed away. "You used me." "I recruited you. There's a difference." Then she noticed it. His gloves, not work gloves, tactical ones. His shirt had a logo embroidered inside the cuff, Phoenix S. She remembered seeing it on the corner of one of the land contracts in the drawer. "What is Phoenix S?" she asked slowly. Elias's expression shifted. Just for a moment. A crack in his mask. "Not now." But it was enough. Vanessa didn't sleep that night. Instead, she copied the files and audio tapes. Elias thought he'd taken the only copy, but Vanessa was learning. Distrust was the only currency left. The next morning, she received an alert on her phone. Audrey Granger arrested for tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the city. Elias had struck again. Fast, brutal, and without asking. Vanessa stood at the edge of a victory she didn't feel she earned. Her sister was going down. Her name was clearing. Her house was within reach, but none of it felt clean. And then the final blow came. In the pocket of her coat, she found a folded slip of paper, one she hadn't placed there. No handwriting, just a printed message. The vault was never the end, it was the beginning. Gigi. Vanessa looked out the trailer window and saw Elias talking on a burner phone. Not to her. And she knew, deep in her gut, the next betrayal wasn't far behind. The arrest made headlines by morning. Granger heiress charged in citywide land fraud scheme. Audrey's mugshot was splashed across every screen. Vanessa watched the footage in stunned silence from the trailer, her coffee gone cold in her hand. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it felt like a trap had been sprung too soon. She hadn't authorized the move. Elias had acted alone. Again, her phone buzzed, an encrypted message. No name, no number, just coordinates, and a single line. There's more to the vault than you saw? Come alone. Vanessa hesitated. This wasn't Elias's style. Too vague, too clean. Still, she had to know. She slipped on her coat, tucking the copied documents and a pocket knife into her bag, just in case. The coordinates led to a shuttered rest stop 2 towns over, surrounded by trees and the eerie silence of somewhere long forgotten. In one of the stalls, taped beneath the sink, was a USB drive in a waterproof pouch. At home, she opened the files. Dozens of scanned documents flashed across her screen. One name repeated across them, over and over. Gideon Hale Granger. Her father. Property transfers. Payoffs. Obstruction of justice. And then, a revelation that stopped her breath. Affidavit. Confidential witness protection subject, Gideon Hale Granger, faked death in 2009 under directive from private intelligence contractor. Codename, PHXS. She gasped aloud. Her father was alive. He hadn't died in the car crash. He had vanished, intentionally, helped by a shadowy group known only as Phoenix S. The same symbol she'd seen stitched into Elias's cuff. The man who destroyed her enemies worked for the man who abandoned her. Why? She muttered. Why would you do this? Suddenly, her laptop flickered. A video loaded automatically. Her father appeared on screen, older, heavier, hair gray at the temples. He looked into the camera with a heavy sigh. If Vanessa finds this, she's already in too deep. Elias was supposed to protect you, not involve you. But I should have known you wouldn't let this go. He rubbed his face with both hands. The vault under the house, yes, it's mine. But the evidence wasn't just insurance, it was bait. To draw out the people who betrayed us, including your mother. Audrey didn't come up with this, she was a pawn. Your mother sold her soul years ago to keep the rest of us quiet. Vanessa's hands tightened around the edge of the desk. The betrayal was generational. If you want the full truth, find the red file. The one I never showed Elias. It has everything. The name of the developer, the real mastermind, and what's hidden under Parcel 19, the true target. Not the house, not the land, what's beneath it. The screen went black. Vanessa reeled. Parcel 19? She remembered the name from the old deeds in the vault. A plot near the edge of town, a place they once camped when she was a child. She barely had time to process the information before her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Vanessa. It was Elias. His voice was calm, but strained. You disappeared, she snapped. You dropped Audrey like a bomb and vanished. I had to. Someone was watching. And we're running out of time. I need the vault files. Now. You mean the ones you already took? A pause. I didn't take them. Another pause. Vanessa stood. You're lying. I swear to you. Someone else went back. The vault's been cleaned out. They took everything except the red file. Vanessa's heart thudded. So it's real? Yes, Elias said. And we're not the only ones looking for it. She turned to the window and froze. A black SUV idled across the street. Engine running. Tinted windows staring back at her like eyes. Get out of there, Elias said urgently. But it was too late. Two figures stepped out of the SUV. One was a man in a navy coat. The other, Vanessa's breath caught, was her mother. She dropped the phone. Panic surged. Vanessa bolted out the back of the trailer and into the woods. She ran like hell, heart hammering, leaves crunching beneath her feet. She didn't stop until she reached the old shed behind the neighboring property. Inside, she caught her breath and pulled out her phone. One last message from Elias had just come through. Parcel 19. Go now. Dig where the oak splits at the root. But be warned, your father isn't hiding anymore. He's coming home. Vanessa stared at the words. Her enemies were no longer faceless. They were family, and one of them had been watching her from the very beginning. The house stood like a mausoleum against the twilight sky, familiar, hollow, and waiting. Vanessa crept toward it in silence, the once proud Granger home now foreboding in its quiet grandeur. Her palms sweated as she held the forged key Elias had given her weeks ago, back when he still pretended to be on her side. The door creaked open. She stepped into darkness. The place had changed. Furniture gone, lights stripped, walls gouged with rage or perhaps desperation. But the scent was the same: wood polish, lavender, and the faint memory of who she used to be. She crossed the floor to the living room, knelt before the fireplace, and peeled back the old Persian rug. The panel beneath had been disturbed. She pried it open. There it was, the vault. This time, it wasn't empty. Inside lay a single box, locked in aged iron and sealed with her father's initials. GHG. Vanessa opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a red file, aged cassette tapes, an old revolver, and a thick bundle of documents tied in twine. She flipped open the red file, and her world shattered. The documents revealed the truth about Parcel 19. The land wasn't just valuable, it was toxic. Decades ago, a covert chemical disposal operation was buried beneath the parcel by a defense contractor operating under a shell company named Phoenix Strategic Solutions, Phoenix S. The contaminated land had been covered up and quietly sold to a private developer, the very one backing Audrey's boyfriend. The same developer who had also funded Elias's operations. It was all connected. And the Granger house? Built directly on an access tunnel leading to the buried site. Her father hadn't disappeared out of shame or failure. He'd been paid to vanish, to ensure no one ever reopened the investigation. Vanessa realized now her home wasn't stolen, it was silenced. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind her. "You were always too clever for your own good." Vanessa turned. Her father stood in the doorway, older but unmistakable. Elias flanked him, silent and cold. "I watched you dig," Gideon said, stepping forward. "Watched you unravel what I spent decades hiding. You should have let it die with me." "Why?" she whispered. "Why not just tell me?" "Because you're too much like your mother," Gideon said bitterly. "Always wanting justice when survival was enough." Elias finally spoke. "She knows everything now. The red file will destroy every name on those deeds, including yours." "And yours," Vanessa said, looking at Elias. "You were in on it from the beginning." Elias smiled faintly. "I was in it for survival too, until I met you again. Don't flatter me now." "I'm not. I'm giving you a choice." He stepped forward, placing a gas can beside the fireplace. "You burn it all. Walk away with your life and a new identity, something I can arrange. Or you leak the file and watch every person you ever cared about, your friends, your clients, even your mother, be dragged into federal hearings and ruin." Vanessa looked at the file, her legacy reduced to a choice between silence and fire. "And if I choose a third option?" she asked. Elias raised an eyebrow. "There is no third option." Vanessa smiled tightly. "There always is." With a sudden motion, she grabbed the revolver from the vault and fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The blast echoed through the house, splinters raining down. "Back away," she said. "Now." Elias took a step, then hesitated. Her father held his ground. "You won't shoot me," Gideon said, stepping forward. "You're still my daughter." Vanessa aimed the gun squarely at the fireplace. "Exactly why I'd rather burn everything than live in the shadow of what you did." She dropped the lighter. The flames caught fast. Elias lunged for the vault, but Vanessa slammed it shut and kicked him back. Her father stood paralyzed as the fire roared. Smoke rose. Heat surged. The room became an inferno. Vanessa ran. She burst through the front door and into the night, coughing, soot-streaked, her heart pounding. Sirens wailed in the distance, called in by the gunshot maybe, or Elias himself. She didn't look back. The house, her house, crackled and groaned, flames licking the sky, the past burning away in one violent exhale. But hours later, as she sat by the roadside watching the smoke fade, a firefighter approached her, soot-streaked and solemn. "We found something," he said. "Survived the fire somehow." He handed her a sealed envelope, singed around the edges but intact. Vanessa opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten and addressed to Elias. It wasn't signed, but at the bottom, a single line chilled her blood. "If she burns it all, give her the name, Peregrine." Vanessa stared at the word. It wasn't just a name, it was a code name, a deeper piece of the conspiracy, one neither Elias nor her father had ever spoken aloud. Her journey wasn't over. It had just changed direction,